Hello, friends, and welcome into Betting Pros College Football Early Line Look Ahead Show. Say that anytime more than once. Quick, I am Chris Welsh, joined by Thor Nystrom, joined by Eric Froton, the Power Team, where we're going to be looking at the early lines over on Betting Pros for College Football Week 3. We've got a whole lot to talk about. We are going to talk about the team of teams. Yes, the big game, because Thor, I would ask you, is week 3, we don't have to get into the game yet because we're going to get there, but is week 3 where the disrespect for Colorado will officially end? You destroyed week 3. Colorado was amongst the bets. So it was a great, awesome football week, pretty much shrouded in how amazing Colorado and Deion Sanders' team is.
Yeah, I mean, for the public, yeah, I think we've gotten there. For the Sharps, I don't know. The Sharps have gotten whipped 2 straight weeks on Colorado. Got to adjust. You got to adjust. Last year we had the data point on this with the teams that turned over their rosters and the ones where the talent got better. And I'm a little bit surprised that some of the Sharps in the market did not see the Colorado thing coming or adjust enough with the Nebraska thing. But yeah, the public is certainly getting around on them. College Game Day will be at that game this week against Colorado State. But yeah, until the Sharps get around to it, we are getting value not from the bad bettors in the market on Colorado. So far, we have gotten it because of the Sharps.
Yeah, I saw the statement over and over and over was, well, wait till Colorado sees a real defense. Well, they did, and it didn't go so well. First half, it was kind of an interesting game, but we will be talking about that Colorado game, that line, and how it moved towards the end of the show. So make sure that you are locked in with us. You can find Thor on Twitter at ThorKU, Eric Froton at CF Froton. I want to ask you real quick, Froton, before we get into the games. Did you notice any big adjustment in the player prop market this week from the previous week? You had been kind of killing it. Were there any big things they got us with? Do you still think there's a big advantage on that player prop market?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. There's always an advantage in the player prop market. And what has really helped is a couple of years ago, what DraftKings and FanDuel were doing is you're kind of gatekeepers to the whole, genre of props. And they would kind of put out just plays that they were comfortable with and the more well-renowned players. But what's happened is with the proliferation of Prize Picks, Underdog, you see Sleeper is into it now. Several other Caesars is in it. BetMGM, BetRivers, they're all putting out props. So with more of these, secondary books diving into the college props market, it doesn't allow DraftKings and FanDuel to just sort of be that gatekeeper and to have, oh no, you only get this. It means that they have to put out everything, and you have to list as many players as they possibly can in order to give the best offerings. And when you list a lot of different players, things fall through the cracks. And that was certainly the case again this week. And it always will be. There'll always be value in the player prop market.
Well, as we go and we talk about these games, obviously those lines aren't out there, but if there's anybody you think people should be paying attention to early in the week when those start to roll in, please feel free to drop those in. Make sure you guys are subscribed to the podcast. Make sure you guys are locked in on the YouTube. Just hit subscribe. You're notified whenever we got a brand new video up. We thank you all for hanging out with us. And let's get to some early line looks. So we're going to jump right back into Saturday. There is a ranked game, I believe, on Thursday, but the games we want to focus on, especially on the early looks. Let's get into the Saturday game, and let's go over to LSU. LSU coming into the weekend was number 14. We'll see where they are. 1-1 going up against Mississippi State, who is 2-0. Thor, we'll start with you. LSU, at least the early line, looks like they are at 9. What does the adjusted Thor line look like, and what do you see in this game?
I have LSU minus 7.2. This would not be a better early kind of a game. I understand why the market has sort of ticked it up a couple points for LSU. I'm not the biggest Mississippi State fan. They did hold on and beat Arizona in overtime this week. Obviously, a lot of the public saw LSU not acquit itself well in the second half of that Florida State game. I'm still pretty bullish on them season long, though. Again, I'm showing the 2 points or so, but they're not over key numbers. For me, that one's a stay away early in the week.
Froton, what do you think when you look at this one? You hear Thor's line a little bit more in favor of Mississippi State. They came back in. Is this something that you could possibly touch on the Mississippi State side, or are you waiting this to come back so you can bet LSU?
Well, with Mississippi State, as Thor alluded to, they just survived a squeaker against Arizona. And what they're doing, it's not that they beat Arizona 31-24 in overtime. It's more the way that they're doing it. And the air raid ways of Mike Leach are officially a thing of the past. Only threw for 162 yards last game, 17 total passes from Will Rogers. Speaking of player props markets, Will Rogers was listed at 283.5 is where he opened. For his passing yardage mark. That's a backwards looking line. And we see that all the time, Thor. But look, 17 passes they threw. This is not the air raid anymore. So what I have questions about with this game is, all right, LSU, we saw, the first game against Florida State, done, check. We all know what happened there. But what happens when Mekhi Wingo has Mason Smith back? And you have that dominant interior that Mississippi State is going to try to run Jacavius Marks, into the teeth of that defense 20, 25 times. That's a different ball game than we're talking about as a team. Sure, you can do that against Arizona, against their soft defensive front. But now you're going up against LSU. I just think that is going to the LSU front is going to check this Mississippi State offense, and they're going to have to do something different. I am backing LSU as well.
Okay, so early line there. Look for LSU and look for that line to move a little bit more in our favor. Going over to Georgia, number 1, 2-0, going up against South Carolina, 1-1. The line looked like it opened up around Georgia minus 27. Thor, I'm going to come back to you because I did get to take a look at the adjusted Thor line sheet, and it looked like the line was actually in the opposite direction, that there might be some value on South Carolina. But you tell me what this game looks like. Is there a bet to be played with the number 1 team in the nation?
Certainly not early in the week, no. The inflation has already been built into that line. My line on that game is Georgia minus 23.7. That line should be Georgia minus 24. That's just what it should be. And so, even if you like Georgia, I can't advocate for you to play that above 24. South Carolina, they can throw the ball, right? They can also play really, really good special teams. That's just the Beamer staple. We've seen, going back to his dad, but we've seen that at his time in South Carolina too. You give a team that inflated of a thing, one big special teams play can flip that thing. Coming in through the back door can flip that. Or Spencer Rattler just has a really good game, and they can get in through there. For me, this is not a game to look at Georgia. For me, this is a game where you would look at South Carolina to bet, if that's what the market's going to do.
Okay, so that's what I was curious about, was because like in that other one where it's in favor of who are we talking about, Mississippi State, and you're like, I want LSU, I want to wait till it moves. I was curious, was this going to be the exact same thing? Is this, we're going to wait till this gets back into Georgia, but you're saying there might be some early value line to jump into South Carolina now instead of just waiting for Georgia?
Yeah, I don't think this Georgia team's as good, certainly as last year's. They maybe even the one 2 years ago. Last week was Ball State, right? Like, we haven't gotten to see him against like the good competition, but they profiled him, or just sort of my vibes watching him the first couple of weeks. This team could get upset at some point, whereas the other couple you didn't really feel that way as much. Just a little bit susceptible. I wonder if Georgia gets into a situation with a close game and they're down late, that Carson Beck kid, I'm not sure about that. Well, we'll have to see on that, but this line, you're pricing them, Georgia, like I said, you're pricing in this inflation that I don't think is warranted with this team. So for me, the value is on South Carolina, but the market is going to bet Georgia, right? And at this 27, wherever it is right now, you're not going to lose anything by waiting a little bit, whereas you could gain a ton if that thing gets to 28. So we're going to be waiting on that.
Okay, so see, that's interesting. That's kind of the opposite in that other game, and that's really where I was curious where we're going here. So Froton, that's the question then. You hear all this. Do you agree? Is South Carolina a bet, or do you want to play the end? Obviously you could stay away from this if it doesn't feel good, but do you think South Carolina now, or waiting to push it to 28, 29, something like that? Do you think that is the bet?
Yeah, I'm not taking it under 28. I would wait until I got the hook at 28.5 at the very least. And the reason why is, as Thor alluded to, we don't know what Georgia is going to do against a real team, but we do know what South Carolina did against North Carolina in week 1. And what they did is they ran for -2 yards on 31 carries. That's against North Carolina's defense. Now you're going up against Georgia, even turning over from one of the most biblical defensive lines in the history of the sport. There's still the Georgia defense here. And if you're just going to rely on Spencer Rattler to have to throw for 350 yards like he did against North Carolina in a losing effort, they lost by 14 points. It was never really particularly close, that game. UNC was in control of that game, especially in the third quarter. I definitely don't feel comfortable taking it under 28 and, leaning stay away for me because of how poor they did look against the Tar Heels. But I would wait until at least it gets over 28.
This game was highlighted. The next game we're going to was highlighted by both of you as a game that we definitely need to get into and talk about. We had coming in number 15, Kansas State, who is going in 2-0 against Missouri, who is 2-0. The line, KSU -6. I think that was even 5, just like a tiny bit ago. So Froton, I think you were the first one to identify this one. So let's hear from you on where the value is, what the bet is, what is the play.
Yeah, well, we're here as we're talking about. It's the opening, and Kansas State opened at -2, climbed to -4.5. I'm seeing it at around -5, even climbing towards -6 in some places. And it's no secret why. It's because Missouri went out there against Middle Tennessee this past weekend and put forth a listless performance. 316 total yards against the Blue Raiders, who is a pretty up-tempo offense and wasn't exactly known for their stout defensive front last year. You know what I'm saying? 316 only ran for 2.4 yards per carry against Middle Tennessee. They're basically in the passing game. Brady Cook was just force-feeding Luther Burden. He had like 115 on the team's 204 yards. So I'm seeing a fairly uninspiring, if we're looking at it, offensive attack that just is not getting it done. I am on Kansas. I want to take it now before it gets any closer. I think I'm going to see it get it closer to 7, even in Missouri. So that's my play. That's what I'm feeling.
Thor, what do you think on this Missouri hosting game? Where's the play? What's the line? What's the adjusted line look like?
My adjusted line on this is Kansas State -7.2. They dropped a bad line, and I want to make 2 points. Number one, the earlier in the week that you bet, the more value you can get. Obviously, you hit these college lines on Sunday and Monday, you have totally different lines than what's there on Friday, Saturday. I'll give you one great, for instance, from last week. I bet Utah -5.5. Last week on, today, last Sunday, whatever, that line was up to 7.5 by kickoff. Utah ended up winning by 7 at the very end, which, the line movement there. Well, exactly. We'll take it. Yeah, we're not going to turn away any winning tickets.
No,
but
sir.
The whole point being, that was a difference between a winning ticket and a losing ticket. This Kansas, yes, what Froton said is absolutely right. This line will be where my line is very quick. In fact, by the time people are listening to this on Monday, we record this on Sundays, it might be at 7 by then. It's going to get there really quick. That's the objectively fair line. They dropped a bad line. That's what happens on Sundays. And then the market knocks it around to where it should be, whatnot. But not just that. The other point I wanted to make is about having multiple outs. You guys are mentioning on a lot of books out there right now, it's 5.5 for 6. There's one where it's -4 still. Kansas State -4 on my bookie. My friends at my bookie. I'm giving them all kinds of free promotion this year because they're doing me some favors this year so far. So you could still get Kansas State -4 right now, and when people listen to this, they're going to be furious because it's going to be a couple points the other way. But bet early in the week and have the multiple books and just look whatever game you're going to bet. Just look and see what the lines are because the other books I'm on was 5.5. Or 6, and it's 4 there still. But yeah, I would advocate for anyone, as long as that number is under Kansas State -7, anything beneath that, I would bet this early in the week because I guarantee by kickoff it's going to be at least 7, might be 7.5.
What if it is 7, let's say when someone is watching this, let's even say it's like a quick adjusted thing on Monday or Tuesday. Is it something you want to wait it out to see if we can get it under? Or would you, I know it's like your line is right at 7 and there's maybe not like extra value, but do you like this team enough to bet them at, this is a must bet under 7, but is it a still bet at 7?
The value's just evaporated from. I mean, like what I would say in that instance is that you'll find more value elsewhere on the board, right? Because you're always going to find the point discrepancy value, whatever. Right now we got it on Kansas State, but yeah, once it gets to 7, now you're starting to play at the margins where something wonky at the end of the game. It's more apt to come back and bite us. For me, probably at 7, I probably stay away from that thing. Certainly at 7.5, stay away from it. 7's right on the line, but yeah, anything beneath that, we're betting Kansas State.
There's lots of ways to look at these. There's the true value betting, and then there's just loving a team. And sometimes that gets a little clouded when we're breaking down these games and we're talking through them.
And to that point, I would say you have to bet the number, right? And not necessarily the team. And so once you feel comfortable where that number should be, you're just talking about the discrepancy, value, shopping, right? Like, I mean, it's the same thing, just like out in real life, whatever. But like, yeah, you can't get sort of myopic and be like, I know what is going to happen in this event that hasn't yet, because nobody does, right? It's so, you grind out the advantage on this thing by just going at the value. We're buying value. We're not buying this team, that team, this player, whatever. We're just looking for value.
And one thing you can do when you're kind of balancing that, you're buying the numbers or you're trying to find the teams that Thor likes. Well, if you're on the Betting Pros Pro Pick Tracker, then you can get locked in and you can follow all of those. I promise you, when I tell you guys this, I do this. I do this with Thor every single Friday. I do it like Thursday through Saturday. I'll go through, I'll see where Thor is. I also just kind of like to monitor, be like, how good of a mood is Thor going to be in on Sunday? So he's usually in a pretty good mood, really good mood this week. So I was going through those. Download the free Betting Pros app for iOS or Android. You can follow experts. Actually had a pretty good weekend as well. You can follow experts, top-rated bettors, bettors on hot streaks, and you can get instant notifications when new bets are placed. Customize your notifications by sport, so you only receive alerts from bets that interest you. You can even limit the alerts you get to historically ROI positive markets of that bettor for you to follow. I mean, I bet baseball, I bet college football, I bet NFL. Right now, MLB props would be the thing that it would push out for me. But I'm having a pretty good NFL prop, so we'll see where that goes. If you want to take advantage of all these features, download Betting Pros app by visiting bettingpros.com/apps or search Betting Pros in the App Store. Let's move over to the afternoon-ish later games and go over to number 8, or at least coming in to this week. Number 8, Washington, who picked up a win. They are 2-0 going against Michigan State, who is 2-0. Washington is at least at this moment, a 16-point home favorite. Thor, or a favorite in the game. Let's start with you. What do you think about this one? Because Washington is not at home. This is actually at Michigan State. So Washington minus 16. Value play, what do we got?
Michigan State's going through it right now. The Mel Tucker, let me just talk about Mel Tucker for a second, because that's going to be the story today and tomorrow in college football. That was the worst in the moment contract I've ever seen a college give out to a coach, extension or regular one. And you can look back on my Twitter to the day it was signed to back up what I'm saying here. Trust but confirm. Worse in the moment, and then now we won't get into the stuff he did that got him fired today, but. Michigan State at least gets to get out of that contract with someone who apparently is as bad of a human being as he is a head coach. That's at least for the school now. You can move on. The rest of this season is going to be a nightmare for Michigan. At least you're out of the Mel Tucker nightmare, but now you've entered another one. I wonder how long these players will stay on the roster where all your key contributors have played 2 games. I don't think the exodus comes now, but this is something for people to watch. Or if you can get, if there's any book out there or any, these exotic books that still have a season-long win total that they update on Sundays, pound the under on Michigan State. They play Washington this week, and then next week they play a decent opponent the week after that. I don't have it in front of me. I think you're going to see a mass exodus from this Michigan State roster.
Maryland and Iowa.
Yeah,
tough 3-game stretch.
Yeah, and whoa, I'm getting fired.
That was Michigan State falling apart right there.
That was, yeah. Like before that Iowa game, I think you're going to see a different roster, or a smaller roster than they currently have, because 4 games, 4 appearances, you get them for free. And then if you go into your fifth, that's when you can't take the red shirt anymore. But players can appear in 4 games and still take the red shirt. It might not matter for this game, although this is going to be the first game after you just fired Tucker. The players are going to be getting asked questions all week about Mel Tucker and the stuff he did, as opposed to this opponent they're playing. And the opponent they're playing is one of the 5 best offenses in America. Washington was going to spank Michigan State either way. Circumstantially here, this is not looking good for Michigan State. And yeah, you bring in Washington. Is the home crowd going to be fired up to get behind old Sparty in this one? I don't think so. They're going to be wondering, like, can we get Tucker for cause? Can we get any of that money back? If we can, who are we going to, what candidate are we going to roll that into next? My system, like in a vacuum, would show just, a slight amount of value on Michigan State. But that's outside of all these circumstances. You can't bet Michigan State here. This line is going to keep going up, I think. And I think Washington is going to have a field day at Michigan State this weekend.
What was the adjusted line? I know you're saying there's value. What is
12.2. But that's, that's both rosters at full strength. That's not the scandal and everything like that. That just in a vacuum, you got to be adding some points. Now you're going to have a portion of this roster wondering where they're going to be, certainly by next season. There's going to be a decent amount of players on that team that are thinking about this math I'm talking about. We've already played in 2. Should I play in the 2 more, then, leave the team? Should I just leave the team now? This is not good for Michigan State going forward this season. It's good to get Mel out, but not good for the rest of this season.
Froton, Thor just laid out, doesn't sound like from a data standpoint there's any value in the game. There's a disaster that's looming around it. Is there a bet here for you? Is this completely hands off, or do you want to hammer Washington?
Yeah, I want Washington. Absolutely. Give me that 16 before it gets past 17.
Yeah,
I think it will.
Getting there.
You got to remember, Washington lit Boise State, who had a pretty decent defense last year, on fire. 56-19 game 1. 37-point victory. You're going to tell me that this Michigan State team, who immediately after spring, Peyton Thorne, starting quarterback, Keon Coleman, the NFL caliber wide receiver who made his presence known against LSU in week 1. Both of them hit the road after the spring. You got to think they must have seen the writing on the wall in some respect. They had the starting QB and the wide receiver 1 hit the road. Jeremy Bernard, who is a very promising wide receiver, transferred to Washington before the season. So this was just the beginning. In the spring of this exodus, there's only more coming. Absolutely, 100%. Give me those Washington tickets, and I think it's a pretty easy call, frankly, at this point.
All right, so let's move to the next game. We're going to Penn State, who came in at number 7 this weekend. They are 2-0 facing off against Illinois. I've got Penn State as a 16.5-point favorite. That's probably going to slide around a little bit. Froton, what do you think? Let's start with you on this one. Penn State on the road, 16.5 points. Is that something you want to bet on Penn State? Where's the value? What's the play? What do you got?
Well, I know what the play wasn't. It certainly wasn't Illinois against Thor's Jayhawks this past week. My gosh. I mean,
we're going back to a bowl, baby.
Oh, geez. I mean, Illinois loses so much off that 2022 just incredible team, too. It's not like that was a great team they had last year, but out goes Ryan Walters, who's now at Purdue. 3 NFL draft picks out of the secondary, Merriweather, they're all gone, You graduate a quarterback who, Tommy DeVito, the good fella himself, while he wasn't, all Big Ten caliber, he completed 69% of his passes last year. And while his layered throws weren't, a specialty of his, as I saw him at the Shrine Bowl try to make, what he did do well is within 15 yards of the line of scrimmage, he was very accurate. He's hitting those guys in stride. Isaiah Williams all over the place. So even though I like Altmaier and he adds a different rushing wrinkle, man, this is a different team, and they got handled by Kansas. This wasn't just a loss. Kansas put up 539 total yards on them. They ran for 262, 6 yards per carry. Okay, what do you think happens when now Penn State comes to town and they're rocking on all cylinders? Drew Aller looks incredible. the 5-star QB. Again, probably the 2025 QB1, if we're looking at it from an NFL draft standpoint. Just too much there. I have to go with Penn State. And frankly, I mean, I don't see how you can take Illinois here.
By the way, is there a player prop out of Penn State with the Penn State quarterback or anybody? Is there anything you're going to be looking for going up against Illinois?
Keandre Lambert-Smith has really emerged as the wide receiver 1 there over the first 2 weeks. I'm curious to see what his line has been. It's been pretty low, like in the 50s. Singleton has been priced in the 80s, pretty consistently, like 85 to 87. He went under that last week simply because they didn't have to, really lean on him too much. And you have Katron Allen there. He had 3 touchdowns, but like getting to 90 yards every single week for Singleton will be tough. I'm curious to see where they put those 2 lines.
Thor, what do you think about Penn State minus 16.5? Is there value in the adjusted line?
I got Penn State minus 17.2. It's funny, this thing actually opened today at 14. And so we knew this thing was going to get to 17 not quite there, but it will be by the time people listen to this, I promise. It'll either be 17 or 17.5. So yeah, out there, you're missing your window to get Penn State right now, but under 17 is the buy sign on Penn State. I'm not impressed with Illinois at all. Froton went into it a little bit. They lost more talent in any one-off season than they ever had in school history. That's what happens when you have a historic draft class come out of your team. Also, the bell cow running back, right? Like, I like Brett Bielema enough, but like, we'll have to see now that he has all of his own guys, because a lot of those guys that just left were actually recruited by Lovie Smith. It's just Brett Bielema helped him sort of raise their game a little bit. But yeah, this team, let me say, so I watch, of course, every snap of the Kansas-Illinois game on Friday. I do not miss a snap of Kansas football. Let me say this for the Illinois team. I actually kind of like that Luke Altmaier kid. He, in fact, I think he's better than Tommy DeVito. He scrambles around. He doesn't make awful decisions, and he has a decent sense about him, right? Like, he knows where the ball should go. He plays within the offense, stuff like that. But he can also add some stuff to the table. He's not a star. Neither was DeVito. But like at the other positions, that's where you've seen this cratering of talent, right? Like, in the running back room, for instance, no one was lower on Chase Brown than I was during the draft process, but Chase Brown quite a bit better than Reggie Love and the Corbin kid or the other kid they got there. And then in the secondary, you went from arguably the nation's best last year to at best average in the second, and I don't think they're even FBS average. Kansas was getting those guys turned around, confused. They're not the most athletic either out there. Like, Illinois went from having this dominant secondary to being a little bit problematic in the secondary against teams that are able to push the ball down there. So I don't love that team, and I'm higher on Penn State, but the buy sign would probably stop for me at 17. I don't know if I would want to lay that hook up there. It would turn into a stay away, but under 17, still 16.5 out there. That would still be a fire on Penn State for me.
Let's go to some SEC. Oh, yeah, go ahead. You got some more
just
a
quick note that Thor had alluded to with, as he mentioned, Chase Brown graduating. It's now Josh McCray and Reggie Love as sort of like a two-headed backfield. Penn State is 9-2 against the spread when allowing less than 5 yards per rush since last season. I think it's going to be really hard for them to penetrate that Penn State front, and I think that's a harbinger of things to come.
Let's look at some SEC football. We've got number 9, whoever's going to adjust there, the 2-0 Tennessee Volunteers going up against Florida, who's 1-1. Tennessee, at least I see a hook. I got minus 7.5. There's some adjustment there. Froton, let's actually go back to you here on this matchup. Where's the play? Is there a play for you? What are you focusing on? And what do you think this line is going to adjust to as the week moves on? Tennessee minus 7.5 is, again, what I'm looking at.
God, I want to take Tennessee 7.5, like right out of the gate. As soon as you look at this, you're like, oh, well, obviously I want it. But, man, they didn't – Joe Milton, I just don't believe in him. Mm-mm. I don't believe Joe Milton is the second coming of Hendon Hooker. He got beat out at Michigan by Cade McNamara. He comes here, he gets beat out by Hendon Hooker. And he didn't look great this week. This should be all systems go for Tennessee. everything makes sense here. Heupel, everything. Florida, my gosh, Billy Napier and that whole entire team, just how they looked against Utah, against a pair of backup QBs. I can't get behind the Gators. I just can't. This line was brutal. The offensive line, I don't believe Graham Mertz. So I'm going to hold my nose, and I think Tennessee's the play here. What do you think, Thor?
Thor, can you get behind Florida? Can you get behind Florida at home?
I don't think I can get behind Florida. But yeah, I mean, my projected spread on this is Tennessee minus 5.1, and it's tough. Like what Froton brings up, that would be my concern about laying more than that. Now because we already see in this line, around a touchdown wherever it is, or a little bit above whatever. It's Joe Milton last week. He started out like something like 1 for 8 against an FCS team. And it's like, oh boy, here we go again. Joe Milton, the guy who has won two starting jobs in college to this point, lost both of them immediately when the season started. And then you're starting to see him against Robert friggin' Morris or whoever it was yesterday. He's like 1 for 8 for 4 yards. It's like, oh God. And you're just wondering, like, how long until Heupel yanks the cord on him for that true freshman kid. How do you pronounce the last name, Froton? I'm afraid to say it. It's Nico
Ayamaleava.
Okay, well, very good.
I'll let you say that all off season. So
that's good.
9.4 for the dismount there, Froton.
Yeah, that was pretty good. But yeah, I'm wondering about that. I don't trust Joe Milton as far as I can throw him, but I hate this Florida team too. So this is probably going to be a stay away for me, assuming that it's 7.5. I cannot see backing Florida, but yeah, I mean my line would show a little bit of value on Florida in that one.
I'm always fascinated when you have the line. I mean, that's like a 2-point move. That's over 2-point move. Yet you're like, nah, I'm not touching that. Like those always are really fascinating to me, even if the paper and the math says it. Yeah.
I see. And like, I mean, I can't think of another word off the top of my head. Florida was impotent in the opener against Utah, and so it's like, wow, Utah must be pretty dang good. Utah struggled so badly to get by a Baylor team on Saturday. A Baylor team that had gotten whipped by Texas State the week before, and then Texas State turns around and loses to, it was to UTSA, and I guess technically they did cover by a few points in that game. But it's like, Texas State ain't a world beater. Last year they won 4 games, they fired their coach, whatnot. And so you're wondering about all this, and it's like, it's sort of hard to, it's like, am I even lower on Florida than I was before? But yeah, for me, this is probably a stay away. I don't really like either of those two teams. I've definitely Florida, of course, that goes without saying, but I've also downgraded Tennessee a bit.
Yeah, I don't think I can ever bet Utah again after sweating that out. That was too much. They looked just so bad for so long.
A cover's a cover, Welsh. Cover's a cover.
Hey,
they all cash, baby.
I told you off air, I had a couple money line parlays too going on. Don't like to do crazy with parlays, but I missed that early line after the show last week on Utah. And I was like, I want to have some exposure, but I don't want to pay. I think it was at 7 or 7.5 when I was really locked in. So I decided to money line parlay, and I cashed because Utah was in both of them, but I was sweating. I didn't like it.
One of my
I also want to know.
Oh,
go ahead. Go ahead.
I was going to say probably my favorite thing as a sports bettor is where, not in the moment, but afterwards, is when you get so disgusted with the team that you bet on that you take it off one of your TVs, and then like an hour and a half later you realize like, oh my God, they're on the precipice of potentially covering here. I shut the Utah Baylor. Well, I put it on like my fifth screen that I'm not my little laptop one, like, because I was so disgusted with the way Utah was playing against this team that had just gotten smoked by Texas State at home. But then Utah at the very end, they tie it up. They get it to the tie, somehow score the touchdown in the last minute. So then you're feeling real good.
I was trying to tap into the betting universe. Like I would turn on and then something bad would happen. I'm like, no, I can't watch. And then then good things would start to happen when I don't watch. I'm like, oh, I'm not supposed to watch anymore. And then I would come back to it, something good. Oh, now I was just trying to like dial in. None of it means anything, but in my head it meant something, and we did get there. But also wanted to point out, I do think it's an extra piece of credit. Hopefully people give you the attention for, is that sometimes with this type of stuff, your numbers can just spit it out and you're just like, well, this is what the numbers say. This is what I'm going to bet. That's not the case here. You're talking to us in a place where sometimes the numbers are showing a little bit of value, or I would say 2+ points of value is pretty significant in the world that we talk here. And you're just still like, no, I'm not doing it. it also speaks to just your knowledge of the game, both your guys' knowledge of the game. And I think it's just an important separating factor in all of this, that it is not just simply, well, the math says it, so we do it. You got to have some actual, like, game acclimate and going and breaking through here. So I just want to give you extra credit for that, because I think that's missing sometimes in
it's
all
a great
of this,
point.
in the projection world.
Yeah, I mean, like I think it's sort of like a guideline or like bumpers for me. But yeah, I mean, that's all it's doing. It's sort of, where should we start? But like outside, everything else, my handicap and obviously my perception of the team and whatnot, it's going to inform the rest of it. But you just sort of know we're in a vacuum. This is what would be fair. This would be the fair sticker price. And then, yeah, you add the rest of it and hopefully you cash some tickets.
Exactly. All right. So I teased it at the top of the show. This is going to be our last big focal point game. We do have, just like we did last week, the smaller game or line change potentials, games that could have some changing potential that each one of these guys have both focused on. We've got 2 from Froton, 3 from Thor. We're going to get them on some quick hitters on who those games and what those games are. But at the top, I teased the most exciting team in college football right now. They came in number 22, Colorado. 2-0 now, going up against Colorado State. Colorado, I believe, opened up at 21 or 21 and a half, or at least the conversation was that. And it's at 23 and a half right now. Colorado is a monster. It is the most fun. I think it's the most fun to watch. And I think it is great for college football, for even the casual fans. Casual fans sometimes need ways to lock in, and even casual bettors need ways to lock in. Colorado's been that, but this is going to be the first big line, maybe not the first test, obviously not, but the first big line that Colorado is going to rock here. So Thor, let's start with you. You alluded to it earlier on that the Sharps pushed hard against Colorado last week. Big defense, bet the house on Nebraska 2.5, and everybody that did that kind of came out looking bad, of course. But now we're in the third game. Is it a letdown spot? It's a bad team. Just talk to us about the betting nature of Colorado, and then obviously if there is anything that you're going to play with this big of a line against Colorado State.
Yeah, the Sharps are wrong about Colorado, and enough so that we've gotten a lot of value on them so far. And I think the books might have been anticipating a little bit of the same when they dropped that line, 21.5. Going the other way, you got a little bit of a dead zone, but they were sort of wondering, what side's going to get hit. Not a surprise at all that it's Colorado. And this isn't the public. The people that are betting it on Sunday afternoons, right when it drops, Circa and the offshore books, whatnot, those are the sharks in the water. This time, what you've gotten a sense of the last couple hours is they're starting to get woken up a little bit to what's actually going on. Not what they saw in their spreadsheets or what they wanted to believe, whatever. It's the truth is starting to get through to them. My line in this game is Colorado minus 26.6. Even at, where'd you say it's at 23?
23 and a half, I'm seeing it.
It's not far enough. And this thing by kickoff is going to be 28. Again, they dropped it to not nearly as much as the last 2 weeks. They're starting to get around. But this line's going to keep climbing. Is it a potential letdown spot? I don't know. They had 10 guys in their roster last year. Those guys presumably are pretty tickled that now they've already doubled their win total from last year. I don't think their effort is going to be a letdown. And the new players there, they seem to pretty well rally around the idea of us against the world and the Sharps, and then some of the too cool for school media types. They gave them a lot of ammo there, Colorado. And again, my system, it's just a quantifiable deal. They dropped that thing too low. That line needs to be, in my opinion, it should have dropped to 27, and I think it's going to be 28 by kick. But if the books want to keep dropping it too low, the people that are betting on Sunday can chomp into some big time value there.
And you're going to just bet it under 27. You're comfortable, whatever, under 27?
Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah, I mean, I would bet it to 26.
I like that 23. I like 23 and a half a lot, by the way. I think that's when when we're done with the show, I'm going to place on
some tickets in pocket.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Froton, I obviously want to ask you about the game, but I'm also curious about any of the player prop market. I personally, one of my favorite players in college has become Jimmy Horn Jr. I love Horn. I think he's insane. I love watching him. And he's not even the most exciting of them. Everyone talks about Hunter. Weaver really popped this past week. but I love Horn. Sitter Sanders is a monster. What are you looking for, just real quick, as far as any prop value once they start to go? Is there a certain player or two you're going to look for and what that number might be?
Well, yeah, definitely Shador he obviously is too emphatic overs because he started out at 297.5 last week, even after going nuclear in week 1, pretty much because of the pace that Nebraska played in against Minnesota. That was a bowling shoe ugly game. No offense, Thor. I know you were there, and it was exciting. You got your win and everything. But if you're a non-gopher and you're watching that game, that was tough to watch. With Shador, he was still only open to 297.5. I went and put out a column and said, this is a disgrace. He went up to 315, and then they actually whittled it back down. After he spiked immediately, 315, he actually ended up closing at 307. So it wasn't just in the totals and sides market. It was everything. It was in the player props. Xavier Weaver was 66.5. That was a little too low, obviously. Same thing with Hunter. He was 63.5. He ended up clearing that. And it's just impossible to fade this passing attack. So I'm curious to see what they will have it at this week because they're playing Colorado State, who I don't know if, as I'm sure most people are aware of, they played Washington State last week, who put up 466 passing yards on Colorado State. There will be no shortage of passing yards for Colorado here. I'm not worried about that in the slightest. So I would say keep a keen eye on the opening for that passing attack and be ready to take that over on.
What about anything in the game as well? Just your thoughts. Are you like Thor? Are you slamming this under 26? Do you like that 23.5 line? Is it too low? What do you got on this?
23.5 I want over. Certainly. The one little caveat I have, I wouldn't take it over. If it gets to past 28.5, I'd lay off. Reason why is because Colorado State can throw. This is Jay Norvell, year 2. Clay Millen is a kid who's there. He brought in. It's his recruit. You got Torrey Horton there. I think Justice Ross Simmons is a pretty good receiver. Obviously, it didn't go well with Nebraska because Jeff Sims can't throw a forward pass. So they didn't have anything to go to once they got down to Colorado. And then once he did start throwing, it was game over. At least Colorado State can throw the ball, and can move the ball through the air because it's just something. At least I think they could hang around that 28.5. 23.5 is just a straight go if that's where it is as soon as this prints. So, yeah.
Well, you're looking for your Colorado bets? You got them. You guys got your Colorado bets there. This final segment, this is dedicated to both of you guys for smaller game talk / potential line changes. These are games that you guys have identified as potential line changes that you might want to get in on. Froton, we will start with your 2. You've got Northwestern versus Duke and BYU versus Arkansas. Give us the, not the 10 cent tour, but the quick synopsis on why these 2 jumped out as potential line changers for you.
I'm sure everybody's been following Northwestern fairly closely. It's basically, the Mel Tucker situation happened 3 months beforehand with Pat Fitzgerald where he got fired. And now they're kind of scrambling with a first-year head coach, defensive coordinator taking over there. Nebraska is 1-13 against the spread when allowing 22 points or more since the 2021 season. That is a horror show. And with this Duke team, obviously, Mike Elko, the head coach, has done just an incredible job. Went out there and emasculated Clemson in week 1. Took care of business. Now he's coming out there against the Northwestern team who got completely run over by Rutgers. They couldn't do anything against Rutgers. That defensive line absolutely overran Northwestern and everything they tried to do. Now they're going up against Duke. Again, another incredible defensive head coach in Mike Elko. I just don't see it happening. Game opened up at 18. It's now at -20. It was at 50.5 on the total. Now 46.5. I like that under. I don't think Northwestern can score. Give me that under 46.5. It is going to continue to plummet. BYU at Arkansas opened at -8. With Arkansas favored. Now it's -10. It was 55 on a total. Now is 52. Listen, it's pretty clear here. At Arkansas, BYU, Keaton Slovis, I can't believe he still has a starting job. running wise, running the ball, just simply not what it was last year. Tyler Algier is not in that backfield anymore. It showed. Aiden Robbins is not up to the task, transfer from UNLV. Arkansas 10-2 against the spread when allowing less than 3 sacks. I can't see BYU really putting any pressure on KJ Jefferson. If you're not going to stress him, 10 points, it's moved up. I think it continues to go up. This is a bad BYU team in the full rebuild. Give me the Razorbacks.
All right, we've got Thor's potential line-changing games. You've targeted 3 games, Thor. Ohio versus Iowa State. Try to say that. My brain completely shut down. Ohio versus Iowa State. Rutgers versus Virginia Tech. And Purdue versus Syracuse. Those are your 3 potential line-changing targets. So give us a synopsis and where you're going with all 3 of those.
Yeah, my line on the Iowa State Ohio game is Iowa State minus 8.8, and it's under a field goal right now. So we definitely bet that one. I get why people are out on the Cyclones after the gambling stuff and all that sort of stuff. And last week the offense once again looked a bit lethargic against Iowa, but it's Iowa. Iowa's a decent team this year. Ohio, they're a one-man show with Mr. Rourke, and Rourke he's one play away from being out of any given game. Even with Rourke, this line is too low. It needs to be over a field goal. And if Rourke gets injured in this game or whatever, this one could get ugly really quick for Ohio. But like I said, it's not dependent on that. The market seems to like this Ohio team a little bit more than objective reality. So that line should move the other way. I would get it beneath a field goal. You got Rutgers and Virginia Tech, right?
I went away from it. Yes, Rutgers, Virginia Tech.
My line on that
2.
one's Rutgers minus 6.3. Open at 4. The line I got it at was 4.5. You'd have to shop around, but that was the best line I could find on my thing. It's already coming up, and that thing will be at least 6 by kick. I think the line on that one probably should be more like 7. Rutgers has looked very good in the first couple games. Now, not playing great opponents for sure, but that they're better by a decent bit than they were last season. First game, they absolutely smoked Northwestern. Northwestern turns around and smokes UTEP, a team that a lot of people thought they were going to lose. The market certainly did. UTEP was favored on the road in Northwestern in that spot. So really like Rutgers. Virginia Tech, I didn't like that team heading into the season. Nothing that has happened has gotten me to change that opinion. This past week, they lose on their home field to a Purdue team that the week before had lost to Fresno State. And then Fresno State this week barely gets by an FCS team. So, I don't like the Virginia Tech team. That game is in Rutgers. I think that line needs to be higher. You got to remind me the third one.
And the last one up here is
today.
It's Purdue and Syracuse. Purdue and Syracuse sort of going, I was just talking about Purdue, sort of going the other way. Because Purdue wins in Blacksburg, which, 8 years ago, that would have been cool. But it's not the same thing anymore. Virginia Tech stinks. But now it's like the market is giving Purdue some sort of credit for that, where that line open, it was like a pick 'em. And I was looking at it are you kidding? Syracuse has looked pretty good so far. Really good, actually. And to put it that low, you're saying these teams are, right there with each other. That's just not true. My line on that game is Syracuse minus 6.6. I will mention there are 2 injuries to monitor on the Syracuse side. The big one, Arande Gadsden, they list him as a tight end. He's a big slot is what he is, but they give him the ball a lot. He's very good. He's going to get drafted in the NFL. He's a very good player. He got injured last game. We'll have to see about him. And then Wollabah, one of their other offensive starters, is also, sort of iffy right now. You'd have to look into that. But even if they're out both those guys, talking about it, right now it's, Syracuse minus 1 or 1.5, whatever. My line being 6.6. Those 2 guys are now worth 5 points combined on the line. They're just not. So anything beneath a field goal, certainly you have value on Syracuse here. So going with them. And then a couple of Welsh I didn't mention to you but before the show. I just keep banging in bets here. One I would tell people to get in on early a total is the under in Southern Miss Tulane. And you might want to consider betting Southern Miss early in the week too.
I don't know how much of this is out there. I should actually check. The Michael Pratt injury news, I think publicly it just is like, oh, he's out for the Ole Miss game. Froton, has that come out publicly that longer yet, or just are they saying he's week to week?
I think it's a week-to-week situation.
Yeah,
I do not know for sure.
I haven't, at least I'm talking about just the reported. Point I'm trying to make on this one is Michael Pratt's going to be out for a little bit. Michael Pratt's not playing this weekend. I don't think that is out there publicly. I would, if you want to get in on this one, Southern Miss would be the side, and the under is where there is more value. I was showing, so hold on, let me pull this up. My system, and this is in a vacuum where it would be like Michael Pratt is playing. My system had this at 48.7 as the total. Right now it's 52.5. Without Michael Pratt, you wonder how many points should you drop the over-under in a game like that? It's 5 or 6 points, right?
Especially against Southern Miss. They're not a rapid team. Like they're
not a rapid team.
Yeah,
a team that plays pretty salty defense,
Yep.
and they want to run the ball. What they want to do is funnel every single touch they can to Frank Gore Jr. And and they have one other decent back too. But like that's what they want to do. They've had quarterback issues for years. I mean, like this year they're going with the Billy Wiles. Like a kid who was like on a milk carton at Clemson at the back of their depth chart, whatever. Anyway, the under is the play here, and early in the week. The play is Southern Miss because once that Pratt news comes out confirming he will not be playing this weekend, you're not going to be able to get the double-digit points that you're getting right now with Southern Miss at home.
Eric Froton on Twitter at CF Froton. I was about to put your name in there. CF Froton. Follow him. Make sure you can check out everything that he's got going on. Thor, KU for Thor Nystrom. Thor is going to be doing the actual line show with Scott Bogman and Mike Farrell coming up, I believe, on Wednesday. It drops over on Betting Pros. Then you've got the live stream, which has been a monster, by the way. If you're missing it, you are missing out. That live stream, I believe, 10 a.m. Eastern. Is that correct?
That's right.
On Betting Pros? Betting
For
Pros,
90
10 a.m.
minutes on
Eastern.
Saturday mornings. Yep.
Yeah, Thor and Mike are killing that. So make sure you guys are locked into that. That is one of the highest stream things that we got going on over here. So get locked in, get all the latest, follow those guys on Twitter. If you care, you can follow me on Twitter, and make sure you go and check out the Betting Pros Pick Tracker. You can go download the app over on iOS or Android. You can go start following all your favorite bettors. You can see exactly how they're betting, and you can get customized notifications to like ROI or just everything that they do. So make sure to go check that out.
And follow Welsh on that thing too. But Welsh, I was looking at, I follow you. We follow. Welsh is a lifetime winner over there. I was looking through some of your now. I don't take other people's stuff for college football, but I will absolutely take it. Like, what do I know about baseball? Nothing. What do I know about? So I was looking through. I was like, man, I got to turn on those noties for Welsh. A couple of these other sports.
What I'm waiting for, my key, not to do this, but in baseball is first five. I do a lot of first five and team totals, and I can't track those yet. Once I get going there, percentages are going up, baby.
Oh, I like it.
Okay. I also had a couple of those in the NFL this week, but thank you very much. Yeah, follow us over on the Betting Pros tracker. It's a cool app. It's really fun. You can set up your own groups with your friends as well. I highly suggest it, and it's just a cool tool to get you locked in if you're looking for a little bit more action. Thank you guys for all hanging out with us, and we will talk to you later in this week and next week right here on the Betting Pros College Football Early Line Look Ahead Show. You guys have a great one. Talk to you next time.